Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
So thank you very much for tuning in this week. This is issue number 37, where we will be covering The Chief from Doom Patrol.
He's an interesting guy. I'll give it credit.
He definitely is an interesting guy. I know we were expecting to do Negan this week. A couple of things changed, so we're moving up The Chief. I know we wanted to time it so that the issue dropped next week when Doom Patrol came out on the DC Universe. But such as it is, we are doing The Chief this week. We'll still make sure to promote it heavily next week when DC Universe drops the new TV show.
I'd also like to apologize ahead of time. There may be some changes to our voices. That's not intentional. We are human. We do get sick. But I think you'll still be able to understand everything that we're saying. And if you are a Patreon subscriber, you're going to probably hear exactly how sick we are.
Yeah, there's a bug that's going around, and unfortunately Doc and I have both caught it independent of each other, but we wanted to make sure that it did not impede the recording of the show. So we are doing this episode under the weather for you folks, for you the fans, because we know how much you appreciate listening to us. And hopefully this gravelly scratchiness, a little bit of nasaliness doesn't turn you off from listening to us. If this is your first episode, we apologize. We normally sound a lot better and healthier than this. Please stick with us and check out the rest of our shows. And you can hear us sound less nasally and scratchy on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. All of our shows are available on our website, capesonthecouch.live, which I just remembered, by the way, we need to re-up our domain for another year or two so that we can continue to have that domain host, capesonthecouch.live. And all of our shows are available on the Libsyn network. So that's how you can find us. We are on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, everywhere at Capes on the Couch. So just type that into your search engine and please like and subscribe. Leave a positive rating and review if you listen to us on a platform that allows you to do so. And that's about it. So, Doc, before we get started into the main episode, we are recording on Super Bowl Sunday. So by the time this episode drops, our predictions or statements will be old hat, but such as it is. Do you have any predictions for the game tonight?
I am predicting that I will hate the Patriots throughout.
I think that is an evergreen prediction and one in which I can safely say that I join you.
No, I won't cop out. I'm going to say the Rams win close because that's exactly what my emotions want at this point. I don't have specific evidence unless Donald just dominates on the defensive line, gets in Brady's face, and it's just chaos on that end. I think the Rams could put up the points, but I'm just wondering if the typical Patriot way of surgically picking apart teams continues and we have to endure another Tom Brady ring. Oh.
Yeah, at this point, he's looking to complete the gauntlet and he will have his sixth ring and then he will snap his fingers and half of the NFL fandom will disappear.
Also known as the NFC.
Yeah. Fuck Tom Brady. Fuck Tom Brady, fuck the Patriots, fuck Bill Belichick, and fuck the entire Patriots organization and their masshole fandom.
I did not see that coming. Anthony's views are his own. I'm not taking it that far, but he certainly is entitled to his opinion.
You can say that because you beat him twice in the Super Bowl. He beat us.
Oh, for people that don't know, I am a New York Giants fan.
And I am a Carolina Panthers fan.
Right. And so you could tell that my fandom at least makes sense given our location. But be that as it may, it's nice to know that sometimes even the most perfect of sports teams can be brought down a notch. That was fun to watch twice.
Yeah. I was definitely rooting for the Giants those two games, and I will be rooting for the Rams tonight. We'll see if it happens probably by the time I edit this episode, the game will have been over because I don't anticipate that I'll be doing any work the rest of the day.
It's a shame because we could have been also debating about if the Chiefs could have won.
Yes.
Darn it.
Yeah, I know. I was rooting for Rams Chiefs because also fuck the Saints.
So I think that's why subliminally we changed the order of the episodes so that because we wanted the Chiefs instead of the Patriots, we're going to do the Chief now.
Sure, let's go with that. So, as always, we're going to do our shout out of the week. This week, it's The Phantom Zone. Kayla, Jared, and Noah talk and argue comics. It's a real fun show. Check them out. They are at The Phantom Zone, Phantom with an F, thephantomzonepod.com, and you can check them out on iTunes, Google, Stitcher, and Spotify. So, that's a little more comics related. I know sometimes we suggest shows that are mental health related. This week, we're doing a show that's more comics related. So, check them out. Give them a follow. And show them some love. So the Chief from Doom Patrol, a.k.a. Niles Caulder, was created by Arnold, Drake, and Bruno Premiani in My Greatest Adventure number 80 of June 1963. The Chief is the leader of the Doom Patrol, a group of superpowered freaks, and that's the term that they choose to be identified by as they embrace the term freaks. The Chief is in a wheelchair, and he leads a team of superpowered individuals who help save the world. This coming in 1963, it's really not hard to draw a corollary between the Chief and a certain bald individual in a wheelchair over at Marvel by the name of Charles Xavier. And there was some discussion and debate whether or not Stan Lee ripped the idea off from their distinguished competitor. There are some differences between the two, but the leader of your team in a wheelchair, and they both come out within months of each other. It is interesting to see the comparison.
Has that ever happened where one company put out a character and another company put out a character very similar, either as an homage or sometimes as a pastiche? I'm not aware of any. I mean, if I think of doing the Deathstroke in the Deadpool, I might be able to come up with one or two, but we'll see.
Womp womp. The Chief received funding from a mysterious benefactor at a young age because he was a very gifted inventor and engineer. So someone decided to bestow upon him a large amount of money so that he could create inventions that would save the world. He met a woman named Arani Desai, and they got married. He gave her immortality on their wedding night, which I think is just a very interesting gift. Usually you just consummate the marriage, but he decided to make her immortal.
Well, the saying is till death do us part. So
I guess he wasn't having any of that.
Exactly.
But then here's the kicker. He gives her the immortality and then he leaves because he's in danger from the benefactor. So you live forever and peace out.
Wow. I mean, you might have thought of leaving before the wedding.
He leaves on the wedding night. So he's already married. This isn't a case of cold feet. He marries her, gives her immortality, and then flees.
Did they sign a prenup?
I don't know. I doubt it. Then he discovered that the mysterious benefactor was someone by the name of General Immortus, who wanted him to create a serum that would prolong his life. General Immortus, as you can gather from the name, is someone of a long living life, but his body was starting to break down, and I guess the serum that he was taking wasn't working any longer, so he wanted Dr. Caulder to come up with something that would replace that. Once Dr. Caulder found out who his benefactor was, he refused, and so General Immortus implanted an explosive device in his body. Dr. Caulder was able to remove that device, but it cost him the ability to walk. So therefore, now he's in a wheelchair. And here's the other thing that separates him from Professor Xavier. He determines that greatness comes from overcoming tragedy, so he engineers accidents to create other powered individuals. So here's where basically the Chief becomes a cross between Professor X and Mr. Glass.
I like the reference. That's impressive. Plus, you have the idea that Professor Xavier was taking people that were mutants. In other words, they had no control over what happened to them. He didn't orchestrate it or try and do anything to make them that way. But once they were that way, let's see what we can do with it. As opposed to taking everything head on, I guess.
Yeah. Creating problems, finding out who survives and what abilities they possess, and then saying, oh, now you've been shunned by society because of these abilities. Here, let me help you. This information didn't come out until much, much later, that he was the one who was directly or indirectly responsible for creating many members of the Doom Patrol. So he uses his genius intellect and money to help the Doom Patrol fight crime. He uses technology to create suits for members, Robot Man and other members of the Doom Patrol, and he uses his technology to assist them in their fight. It was also later discovered that his experiments led to the Brotherhood of Evil, not the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, or the Brotherhood of Mutants. So another tie-in to Xavier, or another pastiche or what have you of Charles Xavier. It's just the Brotherhood of Evil, and this is a terrorist organization responsible for, among other things, destroying Bloodhaven, the home of Nightwing.
Well, you know, sometimes you're looking to do good by destroying people's lives, and once in a while you're going to do bad by destroying people's lives.
I don't think that worked the way you wanted it to. I don't think it worked the way he wanted it to.
Exactly.
Or maybe it did. So he gets decapitated by the Candlemaker, and for a period of time he exists as a severed head in a bucket of ice. And he loves milkshakes.
I don't know where to go with that.
I don't think there's anywhere you can go with it. So he gets combined with Alice Wired for Sound, that's the last name, a sexually remaindered spirit, which allowed him to move around, and then he died. Now,
Wait.
I know. I was about to get there. I don't know what a sexually remaindered spirit is because, unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that much in-depth research. So if any of our listeners, if you have an idea as to what a sexually remaindered spirit is, please send us an email, capesonthecouch@gmail.com. You can tweet at us. You can post on our Facebook page. You can send us an Instagram comment. Please, if you were a DC fan who read I believe this is the Grant Morrison run of Doom Patrol. If you were a fan who is aware of the history and you know what a sexually remaindered spirit is, let us know and we'll give you a shout out in the next episode. So after Infinite Crisis, he regained his body and leadership of Doom Patrol, and then he becomes more manipulative over the team, and then they resent him. I'm sorry, this is the Grant Morrison run. That sexually remaindered spirit, that's pre-Crisis, so that was not Grant Morrison. So after Infinite Crisis, he regains his body and leadership of Doom Patrol. Then he really becomes more manipulative. He uses fear to get the team to do what it is that he wants. I know Beast Boy joins the team for a spell, but he really starts to take more hands-on control of the team, and they begin to resent him. So then he ends up taking over a Kryptonian body, and he attacks the rest of the Doom Patrol because he feels that they're not moving efficiently enough. They're not doing enough to save the world. And then he uses his intellect to improve the world. He takes every missile on the planet, he sends them down to Antarctica to destroy them, and then he attacks the United Nations because they're not doing enough to save the planet where he knows what to do. And if only he had the authority, he could fix everything.
Right. The Kryptonian body is very important to this. Anyone that knows who Superman is, well, first of all, if you don't, I'm not sure why you'd be listening to this podcast. But Kryptonians in an environment with a yellow sun have incredible powers. Give those incredible powers to someone like the Chief, and you end up with someone that always wanted to physically be able to make a difference, and now they can. So forget using others. He can just do everything his doggone self.
Absolutely. So he gets taken down by his computer, who manages to shut down his brain, which then naturally shuts down the body. And they take the body into custody. So in the New 52, which is the DC reboot of the universe, again, he's young and healthy, and he provides a headquarters for the Doom Patrol, but then he gets captured by Deathstroke.
Really? Deathstroke? Don't you mean Deadpool?
No, we mean Deathstroke.
Okay, just making sure.
The original.
Yeah, because, sometimes apparently they take characters from other companies and they just kind of do something very similar to them. Just saying.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that happening, but thank you for bringing that to my attention. So moving into his issues, the first one that I want to talk about, and this is where the comparison to Glass comes in, which I guess is timely because of the film that just came out, the M. Night Shyamalan film, which I have not seen. I did not see Split, nor have I seen Glass, but I did see Unbreakable.
Same here.
That was an amazing film. That's before Shyamalan fell apart as a filmmaker and a director for a while.
I'm not going to go there.
Well, I will. I thought some of his later output was less than stellar, but Unbreakable was absolutely amazing. And it's also important to keep in mind that Unbreakable was made at a time in which the comic book film for Hollywood were not the juggernauts that they are today. Unbreakable came out in a period in which basically you had X-Men and Spider-Man, and that was it. So he was really able to play with a lot of the tropes that we are familiar with before they became so ingrained as to be rote. So it's important to note that if you watch Unbreakable now, I don't want to say that it takes anything away from it, but at the time it was made was much more of a fresh, new take on comic books and origin stories and so on than we were accustomed to. It certainly wasn't to the degree that we see with some of the formulaic films that have come out nowadays. I apologize for digressing, but the reason why I wanted to bring that up is because in this respect, the Chief is very similar to Mr. Glass in that he engineers these accidents because he feels that out of tragedy, that comes greatness. What I think is a little different, or what makes him almost supervillain-esque, is that he feels that this is the only way to find who the truly great among us are, is by creating these tragedies, much like Mr. Glass did. He knew that he was of fragile body, so that somewhere there must be his counterpart. The Chief feels that because he suffered through this great loss and now he has all of these grand ambitions and ways to save the world, that others must go through a similar horrific ordeal in order to achieve their greatness. Doc, what leads to this sort of a delusion? And I guess, is that even the right word to use, delusion? What leads to this mindset? I'll put it that way. I think it's a little more neutral.
I think he's got it bass backwards. We've all heard the saying, what does not kill you makes you stronger. I think that's okay. I don't necessarily think that's a guarantee. I don't think that's something that people should strive for. I don't think that people should look for all of the bad things or the evil things in the world. We know that these things are going to happen by random chance, but we don't want them to happen intentionally. So for the Chief to go that far and come to that conclusion, he's putting the cart before the horse. I'll give an example that we can all relate to. Have you ever been involved in an activity that involved a coach or a mentor, a teacher, someone that's supposed to take the lead and provide guidance? I think we all have. Everyone has their own personalities. They may look to push you. So if you're on, let's say, a track team and you happen to have someone that wants you to do extra laps because you're supposed to be running long distances, you can understand that there's going to be a level of discomfort, but because of that training, your performance is going to be better during the track meet. Everyone understands that goal. At no point should there be the consideration that the track coach wants you to break your leg. And then from that, you're going to have surgery. And then from that, because you had surgery and now have a metal rod placed in or some other modification done, that modification is going to allow you to have better traits or a better track time. That sounds absurd because it is. And yet that's the premise that the Chief is taking. I don't know anyone that operates that way. That's ridiculous. We know, let's say, from an emotional standpoint, you have a loss. It could be something personal. You got into an accident and had a significant injury. Or it could be to someone you love. It could be someone outside of your own personal body. That is a sad thing. And you go through all the different stages of grief, or not. That's not written in stone. But in those cases, you're going to eventually have a different mindset. You're going to have to find ways to remember the person, or you're going to have to adapt to what your new situation is. At no point do you then say, since I lost this person, I now have no one holding me back. That's absurd. If they were a positive influence in your life, you've lost a positive influence. You didn't double down. You didn't somehow gain more than what you lost. That's ridiculous. And yet, that's the premise that the chief has gone to. The fact that the beings, the humans that he's dealing with, have these other abilities may be fantastic, but for him to even try and take credit and say, I made this, and therefore it's better than anything else that could have happened, that's a fallacy. Because there are plenty of other things that could have happened that in theory could have gone well. So by that logic, how is the chief one of the most intelligent beings on the planet? Did he somehow lose something before that? At least I don't recall that ever being an issue. I don't think the chief would attribute his intelligence to something bad happening to him. He was that way before it. So he has his own example that in theory he could go back to, and he doesn't. Now, in terms of why someone would go this far in such a, I would say, delusional path, I could hazard a guess. He clearly had a trauma that changed his life. And he's been able to continue to have certain successes. But to attribute the success to the trauma itself is taking it a step too far. It's good to say that he had some mechanism of coping, or a robot that did the surgery in the first place to remove the bomb from his chest, which he created, that allowed him to survive. But going beyond that takes a certain level of narcissism, is the best way I can put it. You have to think that your entire environment, everything that is around you, is 100% within your control. Because then you can say, if something bad happens, it's because of something I did or didn't do. Or if something good happens, it's because of something I did or didn't do. The rate of control is actually very low, but in his mind, it's absolute.
Yeah, I think that's important to note because, at least in my personal life, and one of the things that I've been able to do over the last couple of years that has really helped me achieve a level of happiness and understanding is the knowledge that there's only so many things that I can control. And, you know, it's the Serenity Prayer. And I don't think the chief has ever heard the Serenity Prayer. Or if he did, he disregarded it.
Right. Well, actually, let's see if we can modify it to something the chief would understand. To myself, I pledge that I will do the best with all of the things that I am already controlling and the things that I'm not aware of that are causing everything else to happen.
Okay. That's certainly one way to look at it. The other thing I was going to say, sort of the antithesis of the Serenity Prayer, is the narcissist prayer. That didn't happen. And if it did, it wasn't that bad. And if it was, that's not a big deal. And if it is, that's not my fault. And if it was, I didn't mean it. And if I did, you deserved it.
Wow.
I have seen that all over the place online. And it's called the narcissist's prayer.
Interesting.
And it's, like I said, it's the opposite of the Serenity Prayer, which basically projects everything onto everyone else. I'm pretty sure it was created on Reddit. Shout out to Raised by Narcissists. I was not raised by narcissists, but I find it a very interesting community to read. So the second thing that I want to talk about is this manipulation of the team. And I think this comes out of the first issue that we talked about. And particularly in the Morrison run, we see him take a much more manipulative role. He's pitting teammates against each other. He'll say something to one person in the hopes that they will, I don't want to say narc on their teammates, but that they'll turn against. And he creates this tension so that he becomes the glue that holds everything together. Because in his mind, if they operate outside of him, then he's useless. Or that in his mind, I should say, that if they operate without him, that they won't be any good, that they need him in order to properly function and in order for them to achieve the level of greatness that he feels that they are worthy of and that they can achieve. So that goes to your point about the narcissism, that they need him, that he's convinced that they need him, and he will manipulate accordingly to make sure that they continue to need him. It's an abusive relationship on a grander scale, and he's the abusive partner for multiple people on the team.
That's a fantastic point. Even as the leader of a team, there are times where a person can recognize they're not going to be the foremost expert or the person with the best skills for a given situation. In those instances, the best thing to do is to defer to the person on your team that can handle that situation the best. Superficially, in just about every iteration, the chief does a decent job of that. He has no problem pointing out who is supposed to do what, but at no time will he ever point out that that teammate is actually doing something better than he could. He may point out physically there are limitations, of course, but from an emotional standpoint, from a relationship standpoint, from an intelligence standpoint, he's the be all end all. So anyone that challenges him, it's not a dialogue, it's a monologue. He will give a diatribe about why that person is wrong and why his way is best and why, if the person doesn't like it, then they're not worthy of being on the team at all. He has no problem of using the eject button on anyone that challenges him. In theory, if he did that with everyone, he wouldn't have a team. Somewhere he knows that, but more importantly, he has the ultimate hook because he always says that this is for the greater good. And who on earth would ever challenge the greater good? If you're doing something that's considered an overall positive, you're going to go along with whatever this person is saying, no matter what the small negatives are. There's a saying about that. If you have a big enough why, you can tolerate almost any how. So it plays on the idea of having a long-term goal or a large overarching goal will allow people to endure almost anything. How accurate is that? Considering the cast of characters that he deals with, not very. They have their own motivations, they have their own goals, and thankfully, most of those characters recognize that their goals are just as important as the chief's goals. The chief does not acknowledge that and never will. So, you end up in a situation where you're going to have instant conflict. But, as you've already stated, in an abusive relationship where one person has greater authority, greater power, who's going to win any conflict by default? The person with power. The chief knows this. The chief uses it constantly. And in some of the examples I can think of in the comic, he's ended up in such a frail state that he's able to turn everything around and use it to his advantage, even when he shouldn't have power. So, in theory, the abuser just got his comeuppance, his retribution, and at one point he's ahead drinking milkshakes. So, you would think the team would end there, right? He can't do anything. And yet, I remember this specifically. I'm pretty sure, pardon my language, but if he asked someone to wipe his butt, if he still had one, because he can't do anything, they still would have had sympathy for him. Because he points out, I did so many things already that you owe me.
Well, at the point in which he was ahead, I'll interject here.
Sure.
He was feeling guilt over everything that he had done. So he did go through a period where he felt remorse and contrition and was given a body. I believe Robot Man was partly responsible for it. And he removed the head. He ripped his own head off because he felt that he didn't deserve it. And he was kept alive as a head, but he was very suicidal. So he did reach a point in which he felt some level of contrition over everything that he had done, the way he had treated his teammates, and so on. And then it was undone, I guess, around the Infinite Crisis. And that's when we see the more manipulative side come in because there was a new writer and a new change.
That's an excellent point. I did forget that detail. I don't know how I did. But that also does go back to what we've done in previous episodes with narcissism, what I refer to as narcissistic injury, which I know the way that I use it is not the common way. It usually refers more to anger. But my point when I reference that term is a narcissist doesn't take responsibility, but once they do, that level of remorse is so bad, and that feeling that their entire system has collapsed leads them to lose their own self-worth. It's all or nothing. And without even thinking about it, you just pointed that out again. I appreciate that. My concern with anyone that deals with a team as that type of leader is that you have to start keeping track of what techniques you used with each person. And you have to keep track of the communications that everyone else has within the team. Because quite often, manipulation, by the way, this is going to be a bit of a tangent, but I'll get back to the point, I promise. The word manipulation, that's not always a bad thing. If you're a salesman, you have to persuade people. You want them to buy your products because you want to make money, but you're also providing a service, hopefully, or a good that people need. If someone is doing something that's negatively affecting their life, such as, let's say, self-harm, excessive substances, whatever, there are professionals that actually are trying to get a person to change their activities and their mindset so that it helps them and they're more productive in life. Hint, hint. So it's not necessarily a bad thing when people talk about manipulation. What I'm referencing with all of this with the chief is clearly that even what he says his overarching positive goals are yielding a really mixed bag of results, especially with the people he's dealing with directly. We could say it's often more negative than positive. So to get back to what I was talking about with dealing with people like this and using so many techniques for manipulation, if you're not keeping score, if you're not keeping track, the people that you're dealing with are going to find you out. And you're going to really have to have your A game to find a way to fool all of the people all of the time.
If you can't blind them with brilliance, baffle them with bull.
That's right. And unfortunately, someone like him, he's already showed that he's absolutely brilliant. But there's only so much bull anyone's going to take.
Very true. Very true. So the last thing I want to talk about is he abandoned his wife on their wedding night. Now, this came back to bite him because Arani Desai ends up becoming known as Celsius. She gains temperature control as a power, and she comes back. She was thought to be dead. I believe this is during the Blackest Night storyline. She comes back and basically whoops his ass. She cuts his legs off and she's about to kill him. And I don't remember exactly what led to her not killing him. I don't remember if it was either she backed down or she got stopped by other members of the Doom Patrol. But the point is that she had the immortality that he gave to her, and then he left her. And again, we mentioned this earlier when we were going through the background. It's not like he did this before the ceremony, that before he got cold feet, what have you. They got married. he went through with it and then said, oh, you know what? I'm in danger. I can't stay. So I understand to some extent that there's a level of, I guess, altruism there, because he felt that because he was in danger from this mysterious benefactor who turned out to be General Immortus, that he felt that he had to leave her. But that still, I'm sure, plays a role in his mindset. And to abandon that, to abandon his wife, Doc, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Marriage is meant to be a long-lasting bond and an establishment that you are willing to make certain changes in your life. If you weren't willing to make them in the first place, then don't get married. I'm not saying that from a judgment standpoint. I'm saying that from a very practical standpoint. There is no rule that says that you have to get married. I'm not talking about specific religions or anything of the sort. I'm simply pointing out the basics of life. He was willing to, in theory, make that commitment. So, from that standpoint, the mindset should have been, how do we make this work because the circumstances are not ideal? Instead, his thought was, how do I make the most ideal situation? There's a difference there. He wanted to change the entire circumstance without regards to what he's already done. And that leaves his wife in a situation where either she has to do the same or she has nothing. It goes back to positions of power. I love you. I have decided to declare this bond officially. I have certain expectations with that relationship, and I'm not being honored in that relationship immediately. I know that divorce is a possibility, and maybe that should have been on the table as a discussion. It's rare that it happens that quickly, but once again, these were not ideal circumstances. To leave someone and say that it was a protective factor may have been accurate, but what's the level of communication necessary to make such a large decision? I would think that that threshold would be really high. And I am not familiar with anything that indicated it reached that level. It was a unilateral choice. I suppose that her getting immortality would allow for a possible reconciliation at some point down the road, whenever that may be. But that also means she would have quite a bit of time to develop all of the emotions around abandonment. And there are two main emotions around abandonment: anger and sadness. Guess which one she took?
I'm going to go with the sadness.
Yeah, she was super sad, and so she cried a whole waterfall, and it almost drowned him. Not exactly.
But to the point, and I guess this has to deal with, now we're potentially getting into issues of agency and female agency, which I know is not always written very well in comics, to put it mildly. But the notion that he was trying to protect her, I'm going to play devil's advocate and say that he was willing to protect her. We see this all the time, and it's almost, and again, getting back to the point of female agency, it's almost done exclusively with male characters, that I'm going to protect you from my life. I have all of these abilities, but I can't protect you all the time. And that this is my role. I'm the man, I'm the male. I'm supposed to protect the weaker woman, that I can't protect you, and therefore I have to leave you. And therefore he abandons the woman. And it's often written to the point that it's I guess shorthand for a strong female character, which I hate that phrase just because I think it's overused. But a strong female character is one who stands by her man even when he's going through all of this. You know, a perfect example is like Mary Jane Watson, when in the event that her and Peter Parker / Spider-Man are married in whatever continuity you're dealing with, that she's a strong character because she knows Peter is out there fighting, saving the world, and she's going to stick with him regardless, and that he doesn't just abandon MJ. But we've also seen those storylines where, I think there was at the end of the first Spider-Man movie, the Raimi version with Tobey Maguire. He said, I'm walking away because I'm Spider-Man and I can't be with Mary Jane. This is another potential example, ham-fisted as it is, but does this go to that point of saying that it is done with no regard to the agency of Arani Desai to make the determination that, no, I understand you're in danger and I'm going to do this with you because we made this commitment, particularly given that I am now immortal. I would think that if your wife is immortal, you would want to use that. You know, if she has that ability that you gave her the immortality. Now, just not even from a male-female perspective, just from a simple power exchange, whatever, there's gratitude there. You gave me this wonderful gift. Now let me help you. And he doesn't even give her that choice. And he takes that away from her. It's another example, I would say, of female agency being disregarded for the furtherment of a male protagonist. But I just think that, you know, in this instance, it may have been done. I'm trying to, I don't want to say argue both sides, but I think there's a potential there for some altruism or altruistic reason, at least in his mind, that I'm going to protect her because I'm on the run from my mysterious benefactor. But it could have been handled so much better and so much more, so much differently, that I think would have led to a better story down the line for not only the chief, but also Arani Desai to have a stronger relationship through this. You want to talk about turmoil, put your marriage through the ringer and see what that does to you. And if you both come out of it stronger and more powerful as individuals and as a couple, I think that goes to his point, and he doesn't follow his own belief system.
That's an excellent assessment.
And I literally just came up with that off the top of my head.
That's outstanding. The idea that, once again, you want to be in charge, but you have the opportunity to have someone to be your sounding board even. Not even saying she had to be directly involved in any of the other stuff, but just another person, preferably in a way, not directly involved in the other stuff. You get a different viewpoint of things. You have the opportunity for someone maybe with a different mindset to have ideas that you wouldn't have created otherwise. Maybe that would have been a benefit. Sure, there would have been conflicts. Sure, there would have been situations that they didn't agree upon. He would have learned the skill of compromise. He could have developed other coping mechanisms that could have helped him in various circumstances.
Conflict resolution.
Never gave it a chance.
I mean, I can say this, just by virtue of being married, my conflict resolution skills have increased and improved, you know, immeasurably, just by virtue of the fact that my wife and I are different people and we see things differently. And to your point, I may have an idea and I'll bring it up to my wife and she'll come up with a different viewpoint that I hadn't considered. And now I have to factor that into how I'm going to proceed with my plan and say, okay, and now I would be foolish and immature to disregard it just because it didn't fit my narrative, so to speak. But that's maturity, and that's how you grow and learn as an individual. You take what someone else offers you and you say, now, how does this factor in? And does it change it? And if so, what is that change, and is it for the better?
I just realized there's another possibility here as to why he would do something like give immortality at that moment. And I think it ties into all of the other characters that he's dealt with. You don't have to justify your reasoning when you view everything as giving a gift. In other words, I don't need to explain to you why my way is best or why I think we should go a certain method. Here's immortality. Here's a superpower. Here's compensation for something bad that's happened to you, even if I caused it.
You get a superpower. You get a superpower. Everybody gets a superpower.
Now
he's like the Oprah of superpowers.
Well, now that he's done that, how could you complain? Whatever happens from this point, I did something good. So now we're all set. You know? Anything else that happens past that point is going to be totally forgiven because I did the ultimate good. It would be the equivalent of if you're in a marriage and you have a fight. It's like, well, all right, fine. Then here's a Corvette. You didn't solve anything, but I gave you a Corvette. I gave you money. I gave you whatever it is. It doesn't have to be monetary. It can be sex. It can be, you know, the idea that, oh, well, I'm the one at home. This is a situation where it doesn't matter the gender. I'm the one with the kids all day. So I'm giving you all that. I make sure you don't have to go here or do this or do that. See, we're all even. And that goes back to what I've mentioned in previous podcasts where I've pointed out the more you keep a scorecard, the more you're going to develop animosity because life shouldn't work that way. There's no way that you can keep a scorecard and have things be truly fair.
Well, that goes back to the narcissism, I think, clearly, is that they view it that they have to be ahead, that there is a scorecard, and if so, that they have to be in the lead. You know, perfect example. I work with a woman who is very good at her job, but not the best person. You know, she's a great employee, not a great person. But I got into a car accident. This is several years back. I got into a car accident and she came and picked me up and brought me to the train station, which was completely just shocking that she would do this. And it's a wonderful thing. And I was very grateful. And I bought her a restaurant gift card to thank her because she took time out and she picked me up and, brought me to the train station so I could make it back home, et cetera, et cetera. Wonderful thing. But I heard about that for like 2 years after it happened, that every time I brought something up or I would complain about something that she did, well, I picked you up, and I dropped you off at the car. I picked you up from the car accident. Like, I get it, but I didn't ask you to do that so you could throw it in my face. And if you're going to do me that kind of a favor so you can lord it over me, then don't do me any favors. That's totally my mother speaking through me. Because that's exactly, and I know she's listening to this episode and she's laughing right now. I guarantee you, when she hears this, she's going to laugh and say, "Yep, that's me." Right. But that's the thing. If that's how if you're going to do me a favor, do it out of generosity and because you want to do me a favor. Don't do it so that you can say, "Hey, remember that you owe me this."
Right.
Because then it's not a favor.
And we all do these things to a certain extent. I'm not absolving myself.
Oh, totally guilty.
Right. So from that standpoint, I think the difference is we're aware of it and we have the opportunity to improve as opposed to the chief who laid that out there and he was gone.
Yep. Here's your immortality. All right, I got to go. So, all right, I think that horse has been beaten into glue quite a bit. So let's move into the treatment now. Well, the horse is dead. We've been beating it. It's glue. It's Elmer's. The pages are sticky. It dried up and now you're rolling it around on your fingers and you're peeling it off of the little orange cone at the tip of the thing. You totally know exactly what it is that I'm talking about. Don't even lie because you did it in art class. Treatment in universe. Yeah, I went there. Listen, I'm a little sick right now. This is where my brain is going. Treatment in universe. How do you treat Niles Caulder? And again, this is a sort of thing that we encounter with a number of quote unquote heroes, but I think in this instance, based on our discussion, the chief really toes the line because he could very easily be a villain. But for, it's almost like for want of a nail, the chief would be a villain. But instead, he's using all these things for just on this side of good. So this, I would say, is probably the most on the line case that we've ever had. Most of the heroes that we deal with they have issues, but they're very clearly heroes or they're very clearly bad guys. This one, he's towing that line. How do you deal with that to keep him from blowing over into complete villaindom?
Have you ever heard of the show Undercover Boss?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. For the people that don't know what that is, the owner or the CEO of a major company acts like he's a new recruit or was just transferred to a section of their own company just to get the experience of what the staff go through. And it's the typical TV tropes where they do 2 or 3 scenarios with different people in their lives. And in the end, the boss usually does something nice for the particular workers that were featured in the show. I think the chief could benefit from something like that. He just needs to see what it is that the people he's dealing with are suffering from, especially since there are definitely instances where he was a major contributing factor to it. It creates sympathy. It creates empathy. It creates practical solutions that he may not have seen on his own. Maybe things didn't have to go the way he wanted them to in the first place. Maybe other people have ideas that can be beneficial in the long run that don't always agree with him. And here's the part that I think would be the most painful. These ideas may come from heroes he considers to be absolute idiots. The fact that someone that he doesn't consider to be on his level might be able to do something when they're in charge, because that actually creates the positive experience that allows them to enhance their powers. In other words, the antithesis of what he thought was necessary. He always thinks it has to be adversity, when sometimes motivation, sometimes positive thinking and affirmation, sometimes opportunity is the best source of massive change and growth. The ability to see that from someone else's perspective and him not being able to do a darn thing about it might actually allow his perspective to mature. I'd be willing to take that chance. Who would be the person that would allow him to get pegged down that far and actually become a subordinate? I don't know. Might have to go just like generic Superman knocked him out and now everybody's has to help him get his memory back. I don't know how you write the story, but the point being, just bring him down to base level and let him build up from there, but build up with people that are now on the same level because they have to be, as opposed to him always looking from the top down.
I like that. There's another story we can pitch to the big two. Someone get us a DC contact. Hey, Tom King, he's like some of the stuff that we've done. maybe that'll be another book that Tom King can work on. Doom Patrol, where the chief gets taken down a peg and has to build himself up. And get Mitch Gerads to do it, 9 panels, the whole shebang, get the crew back together.
Love it.
I think that would make for an awesome story. You're welcome. Just give us a special thank you and maybe, like a signed edition of the trade. That's all we need. We don't ask for much. And an executive producer on any film adaptation. Out of universe, you've got a brilliant scientist who is at the top of his field, narcissistic, manipulative, distant. I don't really think we're describing anything terribly different from when we did Doctor Strange. We've done a number of characters like this. Because I know you always like to try and see if there's a new spin you can have on it so that you don't just tell our listeners to just go back and listen to the Doctor Strange episode or listen to the Tony Stark episode, What would you say to a real life, the Chief?
The one thing I would say that's different in this case would be his physical limitations. I'm not claiming that his physical limitations are the reason why he has the personality that he does. I am saying that it can be a factor in the interactions that he would have in treatment. For example, it would be incredibly ignorant of me, and I am saying this from experience, to go to a person in a wheelchair, shake their hand, and just absent-mindedly say, oh, no need to get up. I swear to God, I've seen this happen. And I can tell you that the interactions that that person had, it wasn't with a psychiatrist, it wasn't with a therapist, it was with a random staff member in a medical setting. But I can tell you the interaction from that point did not go well. So there's a difference between someone having narcissism and someone having a standard sense of self. And doing something like that from the start really closes them off to treatment. And any consideration for the idea of narcissism is simply going to be used as an ad hominem attack. They're not considering what you're saying anymore. Past that, the treatment of the recognition that a person can have varying levels of skills in different areas of their life, we've done many, many times. If the person, for some reason, has attributed their success on one end to a failure in a completely different and random set of circumstances, it is possible to marry those two. The way that you would do it would be to give as many examples as you can of people who, on both ends, either have had random experiences similar to the person that ended up with negative results, or a person that has had positive traits that didn't have that random negative experience. And you have to attack it on both sides. If you try one path, usually you're going to end up with a person that thinks you're completely off base. They think you're just using a different form of society that doesn't apply to them. And I've said this many times. I'm going to reiterate it. If you think that this is something that's going to change in the span of 1 or 2 sessions, you're giving yourself the wrong time aspect. This is something that takes a while because, first of all, you have to make sure that the examples that you give are appropriate to the person, and you have to process with the patient what their response is after the first reaction. Some people actually take to it very quickly and say, oh, yeah, you're absolutely right. And you get the false sense of security. Oh, yeah, we're making great progress, until they go home and get back to their particular pattern of dealing with things and come back the next week as if nothing ever happened. And some people, more commonly, to be honest with you, they reject what you say in the moment, then have an opportunity later to reflect, and someone else that they've talked to, be it a family member, a friend, or whoever, say almost the exact same things word for word. And because they know that person way more than they know the therapist, they say, oh, great idea. And I've had the experience in the past of having patients say something to me and say, I'm really, really glad my best friend said something to me because that hit home. And the therapist, me in that position as the therapist, realizing, I've been telling you that for the past 5 weeks, but you don't say anything because that is not the type of struggle you're meant to have with a patient. However they came to that realization, let whoever they want to get the credit. That's totally fine. For the details on other aspects of how to deal with situations like this with narcissism, you can reference the other episodes. As a matter of fact, I hope you do. I hope I've done a different spin on it this time. I really pride myself on not saying the exact same thing every single episode because people are always different. And I know that I prefer to have some variety in what I'm saying.
Well, I think it was a very well put together idea. And I'm always interested in your realistic treatment options. And I'm always intrigued by how you are forever coming up with different angles to attack the same problem. And this is why we have you on the show, because you're that brilliant.
Oh, Jesus.
No, I know I said it sort of flippantly, but I'm sincere when I say that I genuinely appreciate how you are continuously coming up with alternative solutions to the same problems that we see over and over again and different ways to help people. Because I do think that over these 37 episodes, hopefully somebody listens to something somewhere and they go, huh. And much like you were saying, that if you hear it from the professional, you may disagree, but then someone says something at home and you're willing to trust them and listen to them. And then you go, you know, and unfortunately, I know that you are of the mindset that you would rather they have the epiphany regardless of how they choose to come around it. And if you hammer it home 1,000 times and then they go home and hear it once and then, oh, you know, I really should do this, that you're just glad that they made the change, even though you've spent, you know, weeks or months beating your head against the wall trying to get them to see it, because that's the kind of person that you are. And that's why we're glad to have you on the show.
And I'm going to take a selfish moment to anyone that is currently seeing a doctor. I don't care if it's a therapist. I don't care if it's a psychiatrist. I don't care if it's a social worker, whoever, any healthcare provider, any mental health provider. If you're seeing them, do me a favor, just at some point acknowledge that they are trying to help, because we're human too. That motivation can go a long way. We need to recharge our batteries sometimes too. Sometimes we do it as a group with each other. We have our own therapists and psychiatrists and all of that. But a patient saying that to us goes a long way. And I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say it's rare that we hear it. So I'm giving you guys an opportunity to actually do good for the mental health workers out there. So.
Well said. Well said. Thank you, Doc, because we do appreciate everything that you do for the show and for helping society at large with their issues. No pun intended. So let's take all of this, wrap it up in a nice box, and see what happens when we get the chief on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Dr. Caulder. I'm Dr. Issues.
Please call me Chief.
If it's all the same to you, I'll stick with Dr. Caulder. The only person I call Chief is my boss.
But I am the Chief. You will respect my title.
And who gave you that title?
I did.
I see.
I am one of the most brilliant minds, if not the most brilliant mind in the world. And as such, I demand to be treated accordingly.
Well, considering this time is as important to you as it is to me, we need to find a problem to work with. So is there anything in particular that you'd consider to be a problem?
My intellect is on a level exponentially higher than yours, and the problems I attempt to solve are beyond your capacity to even comprehend. Therefore, this entire exercise is futile.
Well, then, I guess we can cut this short. I think I could squeeze in a different patient at this point.
Are you dismissing me?
You dismissed yourself. You told me this was a waste of time. I'm trying to be as transparent as possible, as opposed to you, who's claiming to play extra-dimensional chess.
For starters, I'm a fourth-dimension chess grandmaster, so you have no idea what you're talking about. And I do not take kindly to your curtness. You are beneath me, and yet you do not treat me with the respect I deserve, which makes me question whether there is more to you than you present.
Well, I can tell you in my opinion why I present differently than what you imagined. I start each interaction with the premise that I'm no better than you, and vice versa. So, if that's not to your liking, I think we've hit upon the first true topic of discussion.
Striking. You perceive yourself an equal to every person who enters this room, which means you are willing to debase yourself to achieve an emotional parity with your patient, which means you have greater potential than most. You are an interesting character, Dr. Issues.
I hesitate to entertain this, but do you care to elaborate?
I take it upon myself to locate persons of astounding potential to join me in our attempts to improve the world. You are a promising candidate and could find yourself in esteemed company if you choose to join us.
Join? What's the catch?
Of course, someone with your intellect would not simply accept what is presented at face value. That's why you're an excellent candidate. All of my associates have encountered a great tragedy in their lives. I'm of the belief that greatness can only come after sacrifice and loss. So, Dr. Issues, what is your great tragedy?
Well, part of the reason I became a doctor was because my grandmother died after having a stroke, and no one really could explain to me to a level that was acceptable exactly what it means to have a stroke in medical terms.
That's it? That's your great loss?
The death of someone who helped raise me is not a great loss? I mean, actually, now that you mention it, I'm thankful. I haven't had many other significant losses besides, people dying at the expected ages, so I consider myself blessed.
Your so-called blessing is shielding you from any actual achievements. You've not suffered nearly enough to experience the greatness of which I speak.
I'm not looking to be anyone's martyr. I have too many things that I enjoy in my life right now. I mean, regardless of what you consider to be the scope of greatness.
Your myopia damns us all. If only you befell a tragedy of unspeakable horror, you could begin to comprehend the level of change I am trying to enact on the world.
On the contrary, every day of my professional career, I interact with a variety of people on a personal level in a setting that allows them to, let their guard down, face the tragedies that have befallen them in a safe space. If I were to purely focus on my own suffering, I'd probably be a bad listener and not nearly as effective as a therapist.
But that's my point. Your focus on your current job is what holds you back. If you were to suffer a horrific tragedy, you would cease concerning yourself with individuals and begin pondering change on a global scale. I'm sure I could explain this to you better elsewhere. Why don't we have this conversation outdoors? How experienced are you at rock climbing?
I'm not familiar with rock climbing, which is why if I ever did such an activity, it would be with a certified trainer and the proper safety equipment, especially away from people who've already made it clear they wish me to befall a horrible tragedy.
Oh, fear not, good doctor. I myself am certified in rock climbing and would be happy to show you the ropes, pun intended, which would certainly not be frayed or damaged in any way, I promise you.
Well, I think you missed my second point, but then again, I know that on occasion, despite your intelligence, you do lose your head a bit.
Touché, doctor. All right, so you're not into rock climbing. How do you feel about skydiving?
As I may have mentioned to Scarecrow, I'm actually afraid of heights. So I don't think I'm going to be jumping out of any perfectly good airplanes anytime soon.
Damn. Drag racing.
Only as a spectator on TV.
Running of the bulls.
I don't think my wife's approving of that.
Blindfolded parkour.
I'm not sure that's a thing.
Free diving?
I think Black Manta scared me away from that. I don't think we're getting anywhere with these blatant attempts to injure me.
All right. Besides, tragedy can happen anywhere at any time. You could get hit by a bus leaving a building, or be in the middle of a 7-car pileup on your way home from work. How long is your commute?
Long enough that any attempts at what you're suggesting would result in damage to plenty of innocent people and leave you with a deficit in terms of trying to do any good.
You're missing the forest for the trees, Doctor. On the scale of billions of saved lives, what's a dozen fatalities? There's that old chestnut about omelets and eggs, after all.
Yes, but every billion starts with one. And you can replant a forest as long as I have one tree.
Well, I'm saddened by your response. And I can't say that I respect your fortitude, for it does not meet my goals. I wish you would reconsider. We could do so much good together.
I still believe we could. Right now, the only difference is you can't tolerate someone with a different mindset. I'd gladly try to understand other views and find small pieces that I can incorporate into a better system. I'm surprised someone of your intelligence lacks that skill.
And I'm surprised someone of your intelligence refuses to zoom out. But it is what it is. I shall simply have to find someone else with untapped potential and determine their tragic point.
And I need to make sure I follow duty to warn laws.
Oh, I don't have to tell you anything more than that, Doctor. Unless and until we meet again.
Well, I hope it's under better circumstances.
We'll see. Oh, and be sure to look both ways before crossing the street. You never know when a vehicle might careen out of control.
Huh. Well, public safety is always my number one concern. After all, I have to look out for society at large. It would be a shame if I became too myopic.
You wound me with your words, Doctor.
Maybe someday that'll change to healing.
We shall see. Farewell, Doctor. So, are you going to up your insurance premiums? Maybe a life insurance policy, take out something? Maybe hire a bodyguard?
Well, I was actually thinking more umbrella insurance, because if I got into a car accident and those premiums don't cover everything, then, it has to be a combination. Plus, based on his personality, he might say I did something during treatment and malpractice might not cover everything as well.
Yeah, good idea, because I think he's going to hurt you in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, that's...
in some indirect fashion.
Right.
So that's going to wrap it up next week. Negan.
Yay!
I know you've been waiting a long time. Technically, we were supposed to do him this week. Like I said, schedule got shifted around. So Negan next week. And then the week after, thanks to our patron Brian, he selected Steve Rogers, Captain America.
He's okay.
That one's going to be real interesting.
Yeah. I'm going to probably, as part of the introduction to that, explain why, if it weren't for Brian, we probably wouldn't be doing him. But I'm certainly glad that we're doing him. I don't want to make that sound like a negative, but there's a certain mindset that I have to have.
Yeah. And if you would like to join Brian and Matt and some of our other patrons in determining future characters that we do, you can check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/capes on the couch. You can subscribe at the $1, $3, $5, and $10 levels. You can get some different benefits and rewards based on the level. At $10, you can pick a character every month, and we will do that character and answer any questions that you have about them. At $5, you get uncensored versions of the skits, as well as all the other categories. At $3, you get a monthly blooper reel and early access. And at $1, you get a shout out and a thank you. Also, just want to give a quick shout out. I posted on the Instagram page. Our patron, Robbie, who I've known for many, many years, got a fantastic Moon Knight Funko that is now in the office next to us while we record. So thank you, Robbie. That's super awesome and kick-ass of you. And again, as always, you can follow us on social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Capes on the Couch, capesonthecouch@gmail.com. And you can find us on pretty much every major platform for podcasting. And if you listen to us on a platform that allows you to like and subscribe and rate, please rate us positively, 5, 10 stars, whatever the top is, and leave us a review, and we will read it on the show. So, Doc, before we head out, anything you want to add?
I'd just like to say, everyone have the best day you can, because sometimes tragedy befalls us, and I hope it was not intentional.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So for Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.